Ireland's native style of spirit might be the single pot still, which is a fantastic type of whiskey, but if you're looking at Irish whiskies, the majority of whiskies you're going to see on shelves are going to be blends. And I think blends can often have a bit of a bad reputation. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and today I'm going to be talking about 7 great Irish whiskey blends that you should keep an eye out for, because like I said, blends can often have a bad reputation because some distilleries do make some very cheap blends. They might make a lot of very cheap grain whiskey and then flavour it up with some malt whiskey or with some pot still whiskey to kind of hide the imperfections in that grain whiskey. But other distilleries are making some fantastic selections of blended whiskey, which you should definitely keep an eye out for, because a well-made blend can actually be, I think, sometimes better than the sum of its parts. If you take a good grain whiskey, a good pot still whiskey, a good single malt whiskey, and you blend them together the right way, maybe give them an interesting finish, you can end up with a very good whiskey, and that's what I'm going to be telling you about today. First on my list is going to be this one here. This is the Black Barrel Proof from Jameson. So this is the Black Barrel whiskey, which has been put up to 100 proof or 50% alcohol. And to me, this is the best version of the Black Barrel blend that Jameson do make. I know that they have other blends like the Triple Triple, which is an airport exclusive, and it's a very, very tasty whiskey. But for me, the Black Barrel is their kind of very nice blended whiskey, comes through with a bit of extra char, a bit of extra sweetness, and a bit of extra presence, and I think comes out really well. Now, I will say the Black Barrel Proof can be hard to find. I mean, outside of Ireland, I have a grocery store 5 minutes walk from my house, and they still have bottles of this on the shelf. So if you're not in Ireland or you can't find any of this wherever you are, they do have, of course, the standard Black Barrel. And this is a great little blended whiskey too, because it's a blended whiskey. It's grain whiskey and pot still whiskey that's been aged in bourbon casks and then re-aged again in recharred bourbon casks. So you get that extra bit of oak, you get that extra bit of spice, that extra bit of weight, and an extra bit of sweetness that I think delivers really well. Even down at 40%, it delivers nicely even into cocktails. But for me, if you can find it, the Black Barrel Proof is the way to go. Next up is a whiskey that I think is a great example of a well-made blend, even though it's using sourced whiskey. This is the Oloroso cask finished whiskey from the Whistler. The Whistler are the brand that's coming out of the Bourbon distillery, and the Bourbon distillery, some of their whiskey is now about 3.5, almost 4 years old, so they will be releasing their own whiskeys soon. But right now, this is sourced whiskey. So, like I said at the beginning, sometimes you can take very good grain whiskey, very good malt whiskey, put them together and give them a nice finish, and that's what this is. This is a blend of grain and malt whiskeys that's been given a very good Oloroso sherry finish to it, and it's a very, very nice whiskey. A classic kind of combination of Irish whiskies is a blended whiskey in a bourbon cask with a sherry finish. And don't get me wrong, that can sometimes get a bit boring when you're dealing with kind of the same profile out of a lot of different distilleries. But the Whistler whiskey with the Bourbon distillery, they've sourced some very good casks for their finishes, and that does show because there's a lot of kind of effort and care goes into the management of cask programs, and this is a great example of a solid whiskey blend that you should try. For recommendation number 3, I'm going to be recommending a Teeling whiskey, but I'm not going to be recommending their small batch whiskey. I'm going to be recommending their pineapple rum finished whiskey. Now, this is very similar to their small batch kind of classic blend, but it's different in a couple of key ways. First off, it comes in at a higher proof, 49.2% ABV, so it does have a bit more weight and a bit more presence. And while the original one is a blend of grain and malt whiskey with a rum finish, this one has a pineapple rum finish, and I really like the taste of that pineapple rum. It's from the Plantation Distillery, and they make some fantastic rums, and this Stiggins Fancy pineapple rum, very, very tasty, and it's given a lot of extra flavour to this whiskey. It's great in cocktails, but I think it really does shine on its own. I have heard a little bit that there are some variations between the blends, whether that's from Teeling themselves or from the casks they were getting from the Plantation Distillery, but I really like at least this version of it because it comes through with a lot of sweetness, a lot of extra flavour. Those pineapple-y notes come through really well. It is a bit of a limited edition, so if you can't find this, the standard Teeling is a great little blend, but if I'm talking about the best blends coming out of Teeling, my vote would go for the pineapple rum. So if you do see it, pick it up, and if you can't, the standard blend is a fantastic consolation prize. For number 4 on the list, it's going to be something that is great by itself, the Roe & Co whiskey. This is a fantastic blended whiskey coming out of Ireland. It is coming in at 45% ABV, so it does have a nice bit of weight in the glass. It does have a nice bit of heft for cocktails or for other kind of whiskey based drinks you're making. It comes in fantastic, I think, for cocktails. If you're a person making cocktails, making mixed drinks, the Roe & Co whiskey really does shine in a lot of ways, because it's a great whiskey by itself as a sipper, but it also has that weight, like I said, for cocktails. It's very sweet whiskey. It's not the spiciest of whiskeys. It's not the heaviest of kind of profiles, not the densest, but it does have a nice kind of whiskey characteristic to it that comes through because of that ABV into a cocktail. So if you're making mixed drinks, if you're looking for a whiskey that you can kind of sip side by side, or looking for maybe try the mixed drink and try that whiskey kind of together against each other to see how that flavor profile comes through, the Roe & Co is a fantastic whiskey, and it's something I always keep on my shelf. For whiskey number 5, we've got a bit of a different kind of blend, because this is a blended whiskey that doesn't use any grain whiskey. It uses malt whiskey and single pot still whiskey to kind of make what this company calls the champagne of blends, because there's no grain whiskey. It's all high quality stuff that goes into the blend. This is the Irishman Founders Reserve. However, they have recently rebranded to call it the Irishman The Harvest. So I'll put a picture of the new bottle up there so you can see what I'm talking about. This is a bottle I picked up at an airport a little while ago. It's a 1 litre bottle, and I am working my way through it, but I will replace it eventually. It is a blend of 70% single malt whiskey and 30% pot still whiskey. Now, the company behind this, the Walsh Distillery, they also make the Writer's Tears whiskey, which you might be familiar with. For my money, between the two of them, at the basic level, I think that the Irishman does come through with a bit more roundness, a bit more flavour for my money. Now, the Writer's Tears do make some great finishes on their whiskey, like their ice wine finish is fantastic, but I really like the kind of simplicity of this. It's a great pot still, great single malt married together, and it gives it a really, really, really nice flavour. And if you are looking for something, maybe you won't be able to find this bottle, but like I said, that picture, you'll be able to find the Irishman The Harvest, and it's a great whiskey to see the kind of different kinds of blends you can get, even without talking about different cask finishes in the end. Just from what goes into the blend, you can get a very good whiskey. Next up, we've again got something that's a little bit different. We've got Keeper's Heart Irish and Bourbon. Now, you might feel a little bit kind of put out by this whiskey because it is a blend of 41% Irish whiskies and 59% American whiskies, bourbon in particular. So it is more bourbon than Irish whiskey in here, but I mean, the head distiller of it, Brian Nation, is an Irish guy, so I'm feeling pretty comfortable I can call this an Irish whiskey, and at least there is Irish whiskey in the blend. And it, again, like that Irishman whiskey, shows you what you can do with different types of blended whiskey. Single malt whiskey is great, it's fine, but when you kind of put two good things together, you can get something greater than the sum of its parts, and I think this is a very, very good example of a blended whiskey, taking whiskey from different countries, putting them together in a way that really works. This is a fantastic little whiskey. You should be able to find it pretty much anywhere. It does come in at 46% ABV, so again, nice bit of weight, nice bit of heat in your glass from that bourbon, but it's not overly spicy. The sweetness, the kind of creaminess, that kind of biscuity nature of the Irish whiskey comes through and really rounds out the flavour of the bourbon, and I think it's a great whiskey, so give it a go. Now, most of the whiskies on this list so far have been coming in at very good proofs, over 40%, but in this case, I'm going to go in for something very high proof. This is the Two Stacks Blender's Cut blend, and it comes in at 65% ABV, so this is really high weight, really high strength, but also really high in flavour. It is a pretty complex blend too. They have it here on the back of the bottle. They have 40% dark grain, 40% light grain, 8% pot still, 10% double distilled malt, and 2% peated malt. So you do get a wide range of flavors. And again, like I said, it is kind of that sum of its parts being better than the individual pieces, because you put all those together, you get a very, very nice flavor combination. But if it is a bit too high proof from you, you could always go for the standard 2 stacks. It's the exact same blend, but just coming in at a lower proof of 43% ABV. So it is the same whiskey, just obviously diluted down. The flavor profile does change a little. For my money, I really do like this. It's a sipping whiskey though, as you can see from these 2 bottles. This one is much more of a sipping whiskey. You'll pour yourself maybe a smaller portion of it, sit with it, let those flavors kind of sit with you, because they do linger quite long. Whereas this one, you can kind of drink it a bit more, you can drink it much more enjoyable, use it in cocktails or mixed drinks, whereas this one does have that bit of weight. Just need to be a little bit more careful with it, but it is a fantastic whiskey. And if you can see it, it is part of their core range. They do make batches of it, they do put it out. It should be relatively easy to find, and if you can find it, give it a try. So there you have it, 7 fantastic blended whiskies which you should keep an eye out for, because like I said, blended whiskies can sometimes get overlooked compared to the single malts of this world, but they can often deliver fantastic drinking experiences, and often at a lower price point than those more boring, less complicated single malt whiskies of the world. If you liked the video, let me know down below what your picks for your favourite blended whiskey would be, whether they're from Ireland or Scotland or anywhere around the world. Let me know down below. I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesdays, I put out cocktail recipes on Fridays, and I put out kind of interesting videos like this every now and then on Monday. So if you want to see more, make sure you scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Sláinte.